We have been working with the controversy same-sex marriage. This is a controversy since it includes a lot of political, moral, and social questions that actors cannot agree on. For instance, how to interpret religion, legalization, and the understanding of family life, like if marriage is defined as registered marriage, church blessing, and church marriage. Why is there an ongoing discussion about same sex marriage any places in the world? What are the factors in the controversy about same sex marriage since it gives strong reactions from those who are engaged in this? Are there special main issues in this debate that provoke these strong feelings? Our map shows several things. What is to be found in the academic literature? Who are the involved actors? What kind of words is being used? And in what way is the topic being discussed among the involved actors?
This map shows keywords used in academic articles from the online library Scopus. To single out our articles, we used the search queries same-sex marriage and gay marriage. Here we see the blue cluster, which centers around words connected to parenthood. It shows that the node gay men and the node lesbians has a lot of connections to the node parenthood. Some communities stresses that children growing up in same-sex families isn't as well functioning as children growing up with a mother and a father. Two mothers or two fathers can't create a stable childhood, it is said. A counter-argument is also to be found in this cluster, and thereby the debate is created. The red cluster is centered around relationships. It shows why marriage matters so much for gay people. The cluster shows that recognition is important to their happiness. Studies found within this cluster stresses that gay couples living in places where gay marriage is allowed are more satisfied. The purple cluster relates to political and religious orientation. It shows how political and religious orientation affects your attitude toward gay marriage. Keywords within this cluster indicate that people who are involved in the Christian church have a tendency to be against gay marriage. Age and friendship also affects your standpoint in the debate. So this is a map of the acted discourses. The map gives us an overview of some of the different organizations engaged in our controversy and how each of them talks about it. There is a lot of common terms which all of them use. This is words related to having and raising children, many religious references, a lot of references to different laws and legal regulations, as well as concerns around social security and basic individual rights. Although there is a big and closely entangled center of the map, we still find distinct clusters and are able to identify irregularities in their use of language. The Heritage Foundation is an American right-wing organization. We see them in this blue cluster and see that they primarily talk about marriage as a Christian institution, traditional family unit, protecting religious liberty and public life. Although they are also mentioning free speech, human rights, religious freedom and free press. It thus might appear that inside this cluster, the above mentioned values are mostly connected to a Christian worldview. ILGA, the International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans and Intersex Association, is presented in this pink cluster. We see that they primarily concerned with human rights, same-sex rights, gay liberation and the like. It is also the cluster that mentions Facebook and Twitter the most. This cluster is the one most separated from the others. It is based on annual reports from ILGA, who has a worldwide focus on homosexual rights. Marriage is therefore only one in many of their concerns, which is probably the reason why there are so few connections to the rest. The findings is far along the way aligned with what we would have expected to find with organizations this polarized in their opinions. The Christian Institute use a lot of terms connected to religion, while ILGA has a focus on equal rights among hetero and homosexuals. The map still shows, however, that the organizations have some particularities in their discursive approach to the controversy. This map is showing a selection of dedicated websites and keywords that appear at these sites. The map gives an overview of the positions for and against same-sex marriage. Within this blue cluster, we find the term parenting to be found at the website Jews for Marriage, where it is being argued that parents should raise their children to become individuals with respect for all kinds of sexual orientations. We see how different positions are using parts from the Bible to underpin their attitudes. This cluster is named Leviticus 18:22, which is a quote from the Bible saying, "You should not lay with a man as with a woman." This is an argument some groups with a negative attitude towards same-sex marriage are using. However, within this cluster we identify groups with a positive attitude towards same-sex marriage and not groups against. That the query Leviticus 18:22 appears could be due to how these positive websites talks about groups with a negative attitude toward same-sex marriage. This pink cluster shows how groups who are pro same-sex marriage are referring to the golden rule, which says you should treat others as you wish them to treat yourself. For instance, API Equality makes great use of the golden rule as an argument to underpin their pro attitude toward the issue. This is why the query appear within this cluster and why the edges are thicker, since they are illustrating the frequency of the query.
This was a very brief introduction to our controversy. Mapping using digital methods can be a complex and challenging task, but the result can be a very useful tool to understand a controversy. Thank you for listening, and for further information, go to our website.